Hello and welcome to the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on September 30th, 2022 from the dining room table of my parents' house on James Island, where we don't have power because of Hurricane Ian. Just so you know, some of the information in this podcast may have changed by the time you've heard it. Don't worry, I'm safe. It's just a little bit darker here. Now, this episode features life from the campaign trail in the upstate. That's right, folks, the gubernatorial campaign trail. Got some sound for you, and yes, there was not a malt box, so it's going to sound really fresh. We also have details on the abortion vote that the House took this week and what could happen next in the Senate. In business, we hear from Dr. Joey Von Nessen about how the state is doing economically. And due to some time constraints, we don't have a medical section today. Also, there is going to be a very important wind down section that you have to listen to. This is very important. I can't stress this enough. But you have to listen to the whole pod first. You can't just skip to the end. No, it's not about me storm chasing. That is second to the news we are bringing you in the wind down. And speaking of the wind down, we need you to help it keep going by calling us 803-563-7169. We need inane, mundane, anything with ain in it to talk about in the wind down section. We'd love hearing from you guys. Leave us a voicemail at 803-563-7169. Stay tuned. Now for the latest in South Carolina. Currently, the spread of COVID-19 is low according to county-level data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. For the week ending September 24th, there were 4,516 cases of COVID-19 and 5 deaths confirmed by DHEC. On average, there were 322 South Carolinians hospitalized with COVID-19, 46 were in intensive care, and 19 were on ventilators. Currently, 53.1% of eligible South Carolinians are fully vaccinated. The abortion debate appears dead for the year. Maybe? ? On Tuesday, the House voted 95-11 not to concur on the changes the Senate made to the House bill in early September. So House Republicans essentially doubled down on their more restrictive bill despite multiple warnings from Senate Republicans that the 6-week abortion ban, which also had a 12-week exception for rape and incest with local reporting and DNA preservation, as well as exceptions for the life and health of the mother and fatal fetal anomaly, that was what was passed by the Senate. And that was as good as it's going to get, according to what Senate Majority Leader Shane Massey said after it passed on September 8th. Take a listen.
I don't know that there's education in the second kick of the mule. It's pretty clear to me where the votes are, and I don't want to try some futile effort if you don't have the votes to do it. I don't know. I mean, I haven't. I'll speak with Representative Smith soon and see what they might be able to do. But my hope is they were paying attention and they saw where our vote count was. Hopefully they will take this and consider it a win as well and send it on to the governor. Because if we could have done something more aggressive than this, we would have.
Okay, now fast forward, and here's what Greenwood Republican Representative John McCravey said after the House voted not to concur with those changes on September 27th. Also, you'll hear a friend of the pod, Maayan Schechter. She's the state politics editor. She asks a question because she's so quick. Take a listen.
Well, I think we came back to do a job, to do something after the Dobbs case. We didn't come back to do the same thing we had already done. So this bill, we want to advance the cause of life and not just do what is already on the books.
Senate Republican leaders have been kind of clear that there are not enough votes in the Senate to pass any kind of abortion bill earlier than 6 weeks. Is there any kind of compromise you think can be reached given that pretty definitive stance?
Well, the process is not over. And we're going to wait to see what the Senate actually does, how they handle this, which way they want to go, and we'll be relying on them to dictate that in the coming days.
Now, McCravey, along with Representatives Tommy Pope and Spencer Wetmore, were named as conferees to the conference committee, and they are set to hash out differences with 3 Senate conferees over the bill. Now, the Senate has not named those 3 yet. And it's also not clear what kind of compromise can be reached if the Senate doesn't have the votes for a more aggressive bill. New House Majority Leader Davey Hyatt, now that's Massey's counterpart in the House, told the media that there is a chance at a compromise, but again revealed no details.
Well, we hope that the Supreme Court rules in our favor and we don't have to take it up again in January. Our intent is to not take up abortion in January, that this is done. I mean, we put it in sine die so that we could deal with it, so that we wouldn't have to take it up in January. That's the whole intent of putting it in the sine die resolution, was so that we could get it and take it up and be done with it before we came back in January. If we have to deal with it again in January, we will. I mean, we always have. I mean, I've been here 18 years, and I think I've dealt with 15 abortion bills. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that we don't take up. It's not something new on our calendar from time to time. We deal with it all the time.
After this gaggle, Senate President Thomas Alexander of Oconee issued a rare statement expressing his disappointment and said the House's actions put the bill at severe risk. He said, "As House members know, non-concurring makes passing any version of H. 5399 almost impossible. The Senate's previous votes show that the House's version of the bill simply does not have enough support for passage." He continued saying, "Unfortunately, the House's approach likely forecloses any chance to fix issues in our fetal heartbeat law raised by the South Carolina Supreme Court. I support a stronger pro-life bill, but once we realized it was not possible to pass, our primary concern became to protect the most lives of the unborn possible by strengthening the fetal heartbeat law that is in current legal jeopardy," quote. So we're still waiting to see when or if the Senate is going to assign conferees for this conference committee, and if it does, if anything will even come out of it. But we just heard as of this taping that the Senate will return on October 18th, so we'll see what they take up then. Now remember, the sine die resolution, which dictates what lawmakers can deal with after session ends on the second Thursday in May, that expires November 13th. So there are not enough votes in the Senate to pass the version of the House bill, which eliminates the 6-week exception for all abortions. So that's just a little recap right there about where things stand. As for the Democrats' reaction, well, here's House Minority Leader Todd Rutherford and what he had to say about the vote and potentially taking up abortion again next year.
So what we hope is that women of South Carolina see that the Democratic caucus is alive and kicking and making sure that the women of this state are protected, at least from now. For the time being, at least women don't have to believe that they're going to end up on the bathroom floor with a coat hanger trying to perform abortion. And those that perform abortions don't believe that they're going to be put in jail anytime soon. That is what we hope to accomplish today and what I believe we did accomplish. I can't speak for the Senate, and I don't believe that anyone can. I know that a conference committee has been appointed. The conferees will meet, and we will see what they come up with. But for now, and for the near future, the Democrats are going to try and make sure that women in this state are protected.
Now, just the facts right now, so you know where things stand right now. For the time being, abortions remain legal in South Carolina up to 20 weeks. This is because of a temporary injunction by the state Supreme Court over the 6-week abortion ban law that is currently on the books. The court will hear arguments over the lawsuit challenging the current law on October 18th at 10 a.m. That will be streamed on scetv.org so you can watch along. And remember, that's the same day that the Senate comes back. Now we go from the State House to Summerton, South Carolina. Earlier in the week, Congressman Jim Clyburn was in Summerton at Scotts Branch High School, along with Department of Interior Secretary Deb Haaland, to announce the addition of the school, along with Summerton High School, being added to the Brown v. Board of Education National Historical Park, which is located in Topeka, Kansas. The two South Carolina schools were part of the Briggs v. Elliott case involving desegregation, the first case and one of 5 that were combined into the landmark Brown v. Board of Education ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court in 1954. Congressman Clyburn said such state history needs to be taught and embraced.
Those brave souls that decided to heed George Santayana's admonition that the superintendent just mentioned, that we fail to learn the lessons of history, we're bound to repeat them. We're here today to make sure that those who come after us learn these lessons of history. And you don't learn them by hiding them away or pretending they don't exist. That, to me, is the ultimate sin, to pretend they don't exist. These things happen. And you should not run away from them. We should honor them. We should bring to the fore. People need to know this history, and that's the only way you can learn to appreciate anything is to know it, not by avoiding it or denying it, but by accepting it and doing what you can to overcome it.
Secretary Haaland echoed Clyburn's sentiments in her remarks and the ongoing fight for equality and equity that remains. Remember, though the Brown ruling took place in 1954, South Carolina schools were not fully integrated until 1971. Here's Secretary Haaland.
Because of the Brown versus Board decision and the work of an entire generation of civil rights activists, today we live in an integrated society free of legalized segregation. But as we all know, the struggle for equality is not over yet. Sites like the one here in Somerton help us to reflect on the past, to celebrate the progress, and allow us to chart a path forward for a more equitable and just future.
Also on hand at the event was Dr. Bobby Donaldson, a University of South Carolina professor of history, and he's also the director of the Center for Civil Rights History and Research. I asked him about the importance of historical sites versus monuments that get all the controversial attention these days.
Well, I'll say it's long overdue. Having the National Park Service now put its stamps of approval just raises the profile of what's been happening on the grassroots level for decades now. And hopefully it will be the beginning of an effort to bring new attention to what's happening here in Somerton. With monuments in places, and we focus on what's in the textbooks. And so often stories like what's happening here in Somerton are not in our textbooks. And hopefully this is the beginning of a way to kind of rewrite that history. I think having a physical site, capturing the memories of people here, that's how you bring history to life. And so often all we know is the textbook history. This brings new dimension. It gives greater voice and visibility.
And now we are on the campaign trail, folks. That's right. We're ramping up. Like I said, it was on the gubernatorial campaign trail earlier this week following Democrat Joe Cunningham in Greenville and Governor Henry McMaster 30 minutes away in Greer. Now, neither campaign had a mult box, so the audio is what it is, folks. You're going to learn a lot about audio quality in this podcast. You take it for granted, don't you? But let's start with Cunningham first, because I went to his event first. It was at Cowboy Up in Greenville, and a big focus was on abortion access. This was also the day before the House vote, so this was Monday evening. Take a listen.
I trust women, not politicians, to make these healthcare decisions. And that's the difference between myself and Governor Henry McMaster. Because Henry McMaster wants to ban all abortions and have no exceptions for rape, incest, or the life of the mother. I want you to think about that. If somebody you love is raped or impregnated through violence, Henry McMaster in his South Carolina wants her to carry that baby to term.
Also talking to the crowd of about 75 folks was his running mate, lawyer Tally Parham Casey. And just so you know, for some context, she was the first female fighter pilot in the South Carolina Air National Guard.
I believe to my core that women have a right to make their own decisions, that women have a right to control their own bodies. I mean, if you will trust me to fly a $30+ million supersonic aircraft to drop bombs and take out surface-to-air missiles, my goodness, can't you trust me to make decisions about my own body?
15 miles away in Greer, McMaster didn't mention the contentious abortion issue when speaking to around 250 supporters, along with other Republicans, at the 4th District Republican Club's Victory Kickoff. He focused instead on economic development, education, the environment, and his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic.
If the Republican states, if the Republican governors, and there are 28 of us, if they had shut down like the other side did, just tight, they closed down manufacturing plants, Ford, Chevrolet, all of us. They closed down churches. They had people getting married at wedding ceremonies. Congregations were meeting out in the parking lot, but they weren't more than 6 feet apart, so they were getting arrested. Can you believe that? Well, that's what happens when you elect the wrong people and you have the wrong philosophy. But that's not what happened here. Crazy is not what happened here in South Carolina.
His running mate, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Evett, got a standing ovation from some supporters when mentioning McMaster's letter, which blasted the Charleston County School District over an assignment to a class at Camp Road Middle School involving a Scholastic magazine article about a transgender teenager, which district staff later determined did not align with state and district policies.
Last week, the governor made me and the rest of you all proud, I'm sure, when he wrote a letter to the school board in Charleston County telling them that we will not be teaching transgender issues in our classrooms.
I'll have some more campaign trail action for you on Tuesday. I had to hold some over till then because kind of working on a tight deadline here and by candlelight here on James Island. So stay tuned, folks. We got plenty more as we march on down toward Election Day, which is November 8th. Now, we've been talking a lot about inflation, unemployment rates, and the overall economy a lot lately, and interest rates too. Yes, it all blurs together. I know, I'm just trying to keep you updated. But to catch you all up on how our state's economy is doing, I spoke with USC Darla Moore School of Business research economist, Dr. Joey Von Nessen. We spoke on This Week in South Carolina, and I have a bit of an extended cut here for you. And just so you know, I opened by asking Joey to give us the pulse of the state's economy. Take a listen.
Well, right now, South Carolina and the U.S. economy both are doing very well. And we see that across the board. And what's really interesting about where we are right now is I think in many cases we're waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? Because there's this concern over a turn that might be coming, which is going to signal a major economic pullback and perhaps lead us to recession. But one thing that is important, one important metric I think that we don't hear referenced much is the fact that the American consumer checking account balances today are still significantly higher than they were back in 2019 by about 30% on average across all income levels. So that means that even though we're seeing high inflation and even though consumers are seeing their purchasing power eroded, in a manner of speaking, for a while, they still have additional financial resources to offset that. And as long as that's the case, we're not necessarily going to see a major pullback in consumer spending and an uptick in unemployment. But that is a temporary factor right now. And eventually, we're going to see these checking account balances get back to where they were before the pandemic. And then we're more likely to see an uptick in employment and a broader pullback in economic activity.
Mm-hmm. And Joey, when we look at inflation, we look at the 8%, 8.3%, I think, rates we're talking about. And I'm wondering how that affects different demographics of South Carolina and who's more at risk and who's getting the brunt of this versus who maybe is dealing with this better.
Well, it's eroding the purchasing power of all South Carolinians, and we see that across all industry sectors, with one exception, which is leisure and hospitality, so tourism, where demand has been extraordinarily strong, labor demand, because in a strong labor market, typically leisure and hospitality, that industry pays lower wages on average relative to most other industry sectors. And so in a period where we have a strong labor market in South Carolina, we see more people in that industry have an opportunity to move to other sectors and see a significant increase in their wages. And so in response, the leisure and hospitality sector, businesses there are having to raise wages at a fairly fast rate. And so as a result, we're seeing these sizable wage gains, and we've seen that over the last 2 years. So that's the one industry where we're not seeing as much of an erosion in purchasing power, but it's certainly happening across most other sectors in South Carolina. And the housing industry is the one that actually has been hit the hardest, where we've seen a major pullback this year.
Yeah, I want to keep it with leisure and hospitality for a moment. You're talking about wage gains there, so we're seeing some benefits as a result of this tight labor market when it comes to hiring folks for those jobs, because that was always a really difficult one to recover. And of course, with competition and the need, I'm guessing this is going to be some sort of long-term benefit for those employees in those industries when they can have more competitive salaries.
Yes, they have seen double-digit wage growth over the past year. So just significant gains in overall income levels, and that's been very good for the industry overall, for workers in the industry, because they have suffered significantly. The industry lost 50% of its total employment base back in 2020, so they've had a deep hole to climb out of. And another positive note in terms of leisure and hospitality right now is that they still have the wind at their back in a manner of speaking, because we've seen so much spending in the goods market over the last 2 years that we are still shifting back. The pendulum is still swinging away from the goods market and towards services. So that is going to continue to help feed the demand for leisure and hospitality, and hopefully continue to generate demand as we move forward.
And that is one of the more the higher markets too, the higher sectors, I should say, when we talk about employment, just the number of jobs that have come back to that sector. We heard from DO Director Dan Elzy in his August unemployment release, where we saw the unemployment rate hit 3.1% in the state, saying that the dynamic of the labor market is ever changing, especially when you look at the number of job openings in the state. We're talking about 2 job openings for every unemployed South Carolinian. About how do we fill these jobs? How can we promise new jobs to the state if there's such a demand right now already?
Well, this is a problem, and this is something that we're going to be dealing with for the foreseeable future. South Carolina has a very low labor force participation rate relative to the rest of the country. It's about 57% compared to 62% for the U.S., and there are a number of reasons for that. One major reason is that we attract more retirees to South Carolina. So we just don't have as many people in the state that are necessarily looking for work. So when you combine that low labor force participation rate in general with the current labor shortage that we are facing, the strong demand, you do get a widespread shortage. And I think as we move forward, that's going to continue to be a problem for employers. And so they're going to have to get creative. And that could be more automation. It could be continuing to raise wages and offer other benefits, perhaps working from home. But employers are going to have to get creative. That's one thing I think that's very important to recognize is that this is not a short-term phenomenon. The labor shortage that we're seeing now is likely to be with us in South Carolina probably for the rest of this decade.
So, Joy, when you talk about labor shortage issues, what about recruitment when it comes to attracting new economic development projects to the state? Will we still be competitive in terms of bringing new jobs to the state? I mean, we have a lot of people coming to the state, a lot of them are retirees as well, but how does that mesh with what's going on in terms of bringing new industry, new jobs to the state?
Well, it does make it a challenge. The benefit of South Carolina is that we do have a very strong geographic location in general, particularly for manufacturing. So that is a real advantage. We have good infrastructure, including the port and the rail and highway systems that give access to both U.S. markets as well as international markets. So you combine the port with local infrastructure in South Carolina. And we also are seeing a strong technical college system that continues to do well. And I think another element of this that we need to really focus on in South Carolina is to continue to build on the infrastructure and on the programs that we currently execute through the technical college system so well, meeting the employer demands to the workers, the individuals that are in South Carolina. So it's not necessarily that we need to reinvent the wheel or invent new strategies, but we definitely need to scale up what we're doing already because it has worked very well. We just need more of it.
Now, there is so much more to this interview, including how Joey thinks we'll be affected by a potential global recession, especially since the state has so much exposure to international markets through its trading partners. You can find that interview on youtube.com/South Carolina ETV. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news. We talk about life during the pandemic and other natural disasters. And we want to hear your stories as well. Tell us how you're handling things, what's going on in your world. If you were affected by Hurricane Ian, if you weren't, I feel like everyone was, at least got a breeze wherever you are in the state. Let us know. 803-563-7169. We want to believe you.
Oh, we want to believe. That's big time, right?
We're always.
Yeah, we're a bunch of molders here. Anyway, Gavin,
we're
you
in the wind down.
I
gave you a huge tease in the beginning, so we're in the wind down.
And it's rare that we tease the wind down. I would say the first time we've ever done it. And the big news is that this is kickball related news too. I'm gonna be upfront with everyone. This is kickball related news.
Speak your truth.
At our most recent kickball game,
Wednesday,
I was making a dynamite play.
Definitely.
I mean, Gavin, how great of a play was that?
You're not even embellishing, and normally I would say, okay, T, calm down. No, this was a beautiful play.
So there was a bunt. I got it.
You were playing first base.
I was playing first base. I received the bunt. I turn. I hose the person running to first.
You did.
Absolute
Tagged her
dynamite throw. Great throw. And it was like one of those when you're good at pool and the ball bounces back,
Just goes
perfectly.
right in. Like
it was coming right back at me. I knew there was someone behind me running towards home. And so I was like, this is a twofer right here. This is a double dip.
Yep.
I'm going to grab this, turn around and hose this other guy. And as I lunged for this,
brace yourselves, folks.
I ruptured my Achilles tendon.
This was painful to see.
Yes,
I was right there.
collapsed.
I was playing second base. I was right next to you, nearby you, when this was going down. You fall to the ground.
I fall. I absolutely keel over. And it was tough. I started screaming, who threw something at me?
You said, did someone throw a rock at my heel? Mind you, the ball has dropped. I get the ball. I throw it to Colin, our pitcher. He gets the guy out at home. You're on the ground looking at me like, why did you throw a rock at me or hit me with a bat? And just this look of stun.
I was so sure that someone behind me had hit me with a rock. And if anyone just feels their ankles right now, the back, you can feel a tendon. And when I reached down for that, it just was not there. And
trigger warning after the fact.
I am gutting this out. I'm here still potting for you people. I mean, this is true dedication.
This is what a selfless public servant looks like, folks.
Thank you. Yes.
He is sitting upright. You're down a flight of stairs from where you went to bed upstairs. You made it down somehow.
Yes.
How did you make it down the stairs?
It's elaborate. It involves crutches and railings. I need Gavin's pulley system now to do this podcast. Anyway, Gavin, we do have a phone call though, and this is from another person who was there at the scene of the incident. So, are you ready for this?
Oh my God! Another eyewitness account.
An eyewitness account. So, are you ready?
I mean, I had an eyewitness account, but I guess we got another one.
We'll break this down further after this phone call. Okay?
Your Honor.
Hey, what's up, all you leaders? It's Vince Cole Blugo calling in because my name was recently brought up on a podcast and my honor besmirched, and I wanted to get a few things straight. Okay, so I really wanted to defend my honor, but I just can't. AT's totally right. I biffed that pop fly, and my wife did clean up. Thank you, Mary Beth, for doing that. Good job. But the real reason that I can't call and defend my honor is because, again, at our most recent kickball event, I screwed up pretty bad again at first base, and this time, I don't know. It was pretty bad. I don't know if I want to spill the beans or not, or if I want to let AT tell all you leaders out there, but I guess I'll spill the beans. I wasn't playing first very well, so AT and I rotated. I went to catcher, and then on one of the kicks, it was a short little bunt to first, so AT was making a play, and he turned and he stepped to go throw the runner out, and immediately collapsed to the floor, and it looks like he ruptured his Achilles tendon. So hope AT you feel better soon and can get back to golf. I don't know, hopefully within a year or two. But yeah, that's what happened, guys. AT hurt himself. So there. Take care, lead.
And I want people to know that this is your left foot, not your already injured right foot from prior events. So after you got carted off, after I helped you get off, and then your wife came and picked you up, I was like, just tell him to take them both below the knee, and just let's get some new.
Lop them off. Give me some peg legs, some robot legs. I don't know.
And I know Vince is being selfless and admitting that and talking about the rotation, but I feel
Let's break this down. Let's break down the rotation.
It was also maybe my call to tell you guys to switch.
This is what I want to get into. This is the real news for me, and this is what makes rupturing my Achilles worth it.
And I don't even know why I bothered saying, but I mean, you had always played first base a lot of times, and I felt confident with you being there. Vince was dropping one or two balls or something like that. I was like, what's going on,
in the
Vince?
first inning, I was at catcher.
Yeah,
Vince
and you did a great
first.
job because you were calling the shots. You could see everything from behind home plate. And then Vince was like, he was doing okay on first, but not as great.
He had 3 errors in 1 inning, I think. And so Gavin goes, why don't you guys switch?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, okay. And then it happened.
It was the inning out. It was 2 innings into the switch, and then it happened. But I was playing coach because we didn't really have a coach, and I actually had everyone's positions, and we were doing fairly well, I thought, compared to this team that we got previously massacred by. I had a couple good plays, and I had a play right after you messed up your Achilles. because we got the double play, and then I got the pop fly right there, and we wrapped up that inning really quick. But that was, oof. I thought you twisted your ankle. I didn't.
As the ball was falling to you and your pop fly, you were like, 480!
This is by him. Then I was like, did you see it? Did you see it? And like, you're calling Kaylin, you're calling your dad, like, oh my God, I messed up my leg. Oh,
I called my dad. He was so mad at me. Caitlin got furious at me for it. The best part about the whole thing, besides it being Gavin and Vince's fault that it happened, is that when I fell down on the infield of a baseball field, so I had all the infield dirt on me.
A lot of dirt, a lot of dust.
And so then when I was getting into the car, Caitlin, she has not spoken to me yet, and she goes, "You're gonna ruin my back seats."
Well, you're gonna ruin my back seats.
And then upon coming home, I did reach new personal lows that if you weren't laughing, you would be crying. Because
totally.
So I got home, I had to crawl up the stairs. Ugh. I had to shower on the floor. And then I had to crawl from the shower to the bed to get dressed. And my cats were just looking at me like, what is going on?
Is this? It's just a preview of our lives, right? I mean, that's just our future, right?
It was brutal, absolutely brutal. And another weird thing is when I was describing to the doctor that it felt like someone hit me with a rock, like a brick in the back of the leg. They said, oh, that's normal. Most people that this happens to, they swear to God that someone hit them with a baseball bat or something, which is so strange to me.
Yeah. Well, AT, like I told you, I'm glad that this happened after honeymoon week. As our listeners know, you were just recently in California.
Yes.
So I'm glad you got some of that in. It's tragic. We're all dealing with this in our own way. I know you're annoyed by it. We're all annoyed by it, but
it's very annoying.
We're going to get through this together.
If any leaders have any sort of suggestions, you've dealt with something like this, please call in. I am open to anything to make the pain stop because it is nonstop. There is no relief. And it has been nice, the outpouring of people reaching out to me and well-wishing and stuff. More people than I ever thought would even care that this happened to me. So I appreciate everyone that said anything.
Yeah, do we have any orthopedists that listen? Please call.
Please, yes.
Let's get an appointment advanced here.
803-563-7169. Please, I need this.
We have state health insurance, so you know we're good for it, okay?
I really need this, please.
But let's put AT out of his misery, and
yes,
we don't even have to talk about Hurricane Ian. We can talk about that on Tuesday. This is pale. My day's journey pales in comparison to what you've been going through. So
I've never received so much interest in my life, how I was doing from you personally. Like you've called me 3 or 4 times, and your parents called me, and because it's been great. So
we've been working through it.
If anyone wants to call me, go ahead and call. Okay.
And I think we're gonna get the governor to get you the Order of the Palmetto. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think I deserve it now, or at least Russ McKinney can give me one of his 3.
Yeah, Russ. Well, we're all thinking of you, AT, and
thank you.
We're just gonna get through this together.
Not a missed pod on this podcast.
No, not on this watch, because you know what? Your ears still work, your hands still work, your mind still works, and we're going to keep you going as long as we can.
Thank you. Say goodbye. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Show us your appreciation,
the storm.
folks. So yeah, hopefully you're all safe. Hopefully you haven't had any injuries either, but if you have, let us know. We would love to hear from you. 803-563-7169. Give AT some love. We would love to hear from you guys. You can also show us your appreciation by leaving us a review on iTunes. And you can stay up to date with the latest news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. And don't forget to support your local newspapers. For the South Carolina Lede, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina. What other word has "ain" in it?
Spain, ingrain, cellophane.
Cellophane.